What is up, fellas? It is Saturday morning. You know what time it is. It is running back tier list time. We are going into all of the week 2 running back matchups, breaking down my top 36 rankings, going through all of the major injuries. Going to be a ton of fun. Unfortunately, we do have some injuries to talk about, so we're not going to waste any time. Let's start with the will they play tier, which is basically all the injury roundup that I do at the very beginning of these videos. So don't go, where's Kenneth Walker? Later on in the video. It happens right at the beginning every single week. Anybody that is doubtful, questionable, has major injury question marks, this is where we talk about them at the beginning of every single video. So let's start with the will they play tier. We have Raheem Mostert already ruled out, of course, on Thursday night, just reporting that he might be out next week as well, according to Pro Football Doc, dealing with that chest injury. If you guys did not have Raheem Mostert on Thursday night, there is a chance that he does miss next week as well. So prepare for that. Make sure Jeff Wilson, Jalen Wright, and of course Devon Achane are potentially options for you going forward. The big injury bombshell that has happened so far in fantasy football this year, but let alone at the running back position, we have Christian McCaffrey, who was a late scratch, a late inactive last week on Monday Night Football. He potentially could be going to IR. And as I'm recording this, it hasn't happened yet, but there's a very good chance when you guys are listening to this that he is out the next 4 games, and he is dealing with that calf Achilles injury. So for those of you guys that drafted him 101, 102, you're probably not in a very good spot right now. For those of you guys that picked up or drafted Jordan Mason, you probably are in a very good spot right now. And maybe some people are chanting, this is why you handcuff your running backs. But I bet the teams that don't have Christian McCaffrey and have Jordan Mason are in a much better position than the teams that do have Christian McCaffrey and rostered or drafted Jordan Mason. So Jordan Mason definitely going to be a fixture of this top 15, top 20 running back tier list for the next couple of games, especially if CMC gets put on IR. Kenneth Walker, also a major running back contributor that could be out this week. He is officially listed as doubtful. Did not practice all week with the oblique strain that he suffered in Sunday's game. He talked about how he was fine right after the game, and I will tell you guys just a word of advice. When players say right after the game that they're okay or that they're fine, remember that they're running off of adrenaline. They just played a football game. They feel better after the game than they will throughout the week when swelling and soreness sets in. So when a player says that they're fine on Sunday after the game, after they tweaked an ankle or pulled a hamstring or suffered an oblique strain in this situation, remember that throughout the week, the practice reports are the things that matter. That is where we get the most information. And if they're not feeling good, if they're feeling sore, if they're feeling swelled up, they're probably not going to play the next week. And officially, he is listed as doubtful. So that means Zach Charbonnet is obviously going to be a fixture of my analysis today. Marshawn Lloyd also could be getting back on the field, has not made his season debut yet, was close to playing in Brazil last Friday night, but did not actually get out there. We haven't seen how his presence would affect Josh Jacobs' workload. And also, too, somehow Jordan Love hasn't been ruled out yet, and it's Saturday morning. So very good chance, I think, that Jordan Love is not out for an extended period of time because he avoided IR, and he's only listed as questionable right now. So there's a very good chance that the sky is falling on the Green Bay Packers. Jaden Reed, you got to sell him. Josh Jacobs, you got to sell him. There's a good chance that Jordan Love is back on the field before long. If he's already questionable in his first week back from the injury, there's a good chance that 2 or 3 weeks from now he's back on the field. So keep an eye on Marshawn Lloyd. Obviously, you're not starting him. Just keep in mind for Josh Jacobs' purposes that he has a chance of being on the field for this game. So let's move into the tier list. Again, that was the major injury roundup that we had to talk about. The locked-in running back starts. All 12 of these guys are in your lineup. You can see Breece, Bijan, Kyron, so on and so forth. All of these guys are in your lineup because they're top 12 running backs for me. As far as who could overperform and who could underperform, I do like to highlight kind of their matchups and how their outlooks look this week. Kyron Williams, Jonathan Taylor, Joe Mixon, and Jahmyr Gibbs are all in really, really good matchups. So those guys specifically, if you have them, there's a good chance they're going to perform well. Kyron Williams, for example, against the Arizona Cardinals, I'm pretty sure he has stock in that team for what he did to them last year. Every time he played the Cardinals, both times, absolutely destroyed. I think he was the RB1 overall on both games that he played against the Cardinals. So feel very good about Kyron this week. Some of the best running backs in the top 12 here that are in high-scoring game environments. Again, Kyron Williams shows up, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, Isaiah Pacheco, Joe Mixon, and Alvin Kamara. These guys expect to be in very high-scoring games, at least according to the Vegas totals. And then some of the elite running backs who are in like subpar matchups who could underperform. Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson, my RB1 and 2 for the rest of the season, and also on the week. Saquon Barkley and Isaiah Pacheco not necessarily going up against the greatest matchups as far as defenses are concerned. Like Breece Hall going up against the Titans defense, that's a tough matchup. Saquon against the Falcons run defense, they were very good against the run last year and in week 1. And then Isaiah Pacheco going up against the Bengals run defense, they are also pretty strong against the run as well. Not much else to break down as far as this top 12 tier. I think all of the usage kind of makes sense. Breece, Bijan, Kyron, Saquon, JT, those guys were all workhorses. You kind of knew that coming in. Definitely good to get confirmation. Jahmyr Gibbs split the backfield with David Montgomery, as we know. Isaiah Pacheco got a great workload. He was a workhorse. Joe Mixon was a workhorse. Of course, Achane and James Cook already played on Thursday Night Football, had monster games, both of them, so you feel really good about those guys. Alvin Kamara, before the game got out of hand against Carolina, he was in a really good spot. And then Derrick Henry, I talked about all last week how him and Tajay Spears completely split the workload, but Derrick Henry is playing the Raiders, and they are heavy favorites, so I think there's a good chance he has a good potential 2-touchdown game in this one, so I do really like him this week. Now let's get into the more in-depth guys that we talk about here. The high-end RB2s, we go through these guys 6 at a time, talk about their outlooks, talk about their recent usage, and if they are in your lineup. And again, this should go without saying, but if I talk about a guy RB14 and you have a guy that's RB20, you should start the guy who is RB14 in my rankings over the guy who is RB20. If you have any start-sit questions pertaining to this position, of course, leave them down below. Running back 13 for me, kicking off this tier, is Jordan Mason, who we talked about already because Christian McCaffrey is expected to be out and is potentially going to IR. He got the backfield to himself in week 1 against the Jets. The Vikings are a very rough run defense, so there's a good chance he's not going to be as effective as he was against the Jets, because the Jets were actually 31st against the fantasy football running back position going back to last year and adding in week 1's production per our matchup charts. And of course, that plus all of our rankings are available in our weekly rankings manifesto, which you can get for free by signing up on Underdog using code FSE and depositing $10. Within 24 hours, the weekly rankings manifesto will be in your email inbox. You'll have that all season long, or you can get it on Flock Fantasy. And of course, you can also ask us sit questions, ask us trade questions over there. The Vikings are 4th, top 5 against the fantasy running back position. So Jordan Mason is probably going to get a big workload again, but keep in mind, he's never carried a big workload, so there's a chance they dial him back a little bit. Going back to college, he was never a workhorse running back. And then also, too, it's possible he disappoints from an efficiency standpoint. So a lot of people are really quick to throw Jordan Mason into their top 10 running backs this week, into their top 6 running backs this week. But I do think there's a chance he has a little bit more of a down performance, but I still have him at RB13. He is still an awesome start this week. James Conner, RB14 for me in my rankings. The Rams got absolutely run on by the Lions running backs last week. The Arizona Cardinals are actually favorites in this game, 49.5 point over-under. James Conner and the Cardinals are favorites to win this game, and they actually have 25.5 points implied according to Vegas. So James Conner in a really good spot. Of course, we don't have Aaron Donald on the Los Angeles Rams defense anymore. He retired. Great usage for Arizona for James Conner in week 1. You can see 67% of the snaps, 73% of the carries, good percentage of the routes, all of the inside the 5 work, all the short down and distance, and 2-minute drill work. He is in an awesome spot to score a touchdown this week. I actually really like the higher on James Conner's rushing plus receiving touchdown over on Underdog Fantasy. And throughout this video, we are going to be building out a pick'em entry. So if you guys want to tail those picks, of course, head on over to Underdog. And again, you can get our weekly rankings manifesto if you are new. Sign up on Underdog Fantasy using code FSE. Running back 15 for me is Travis Etienne. Everything about Travis Etienne is kind of like panicky right now, and I'm not really sure why, because everybody saw the fumble. They saw Tank Bigsby look good, but Etienne still carried all of the important work. He had 68% of the snaps. He had 16% target share. The short down and distance, inside the 5 work, all of the 2-minute drill work, all the long down and distance stuff. I guess it's a little bit concerning that he only had 46% of the rush attempts because Tank Bigsby did carry the ball quite a bit. But the Browns are actually a pretty easy matchup. I think people are really scared about the Browns defense in general, but they actually rank 25th in rush defense DVOA, and they're 18th in our matchup charts. They are not the type of defense you want to throw against, but they are the type of defense that you want to run against. It's not nearly as daunting as I think people think. And their defense kind of faded down the stretch in 2023, and they didn't perform as well as they have so far in the first game of the season against the Cowboys. They were able to get things done. So I feel pretty good about ETN. I think he's actually a pretty good buy low right now because people are panicking about the Tank Bigsby usage. But to me, I think it's ETN's backfield and Tank Bigsby the handcuff with maybe a little bit of a standalone role. But for the most part, are you ever going to feel good about starting Tank Bigsby on any given week? No, it's Travis Etienne's backfield until we see anything to the contrary. So running back 16 for me, huge riser, is J.K. Dobbins. And the reason he's RB16 for me is the Panthers lost Derek Brown. The Carolina Panthers are, more importantly, just a complete house on fire, terrible operation right now. 59% of the snaps for J.K. Dobbins in week 1 for the Chargers. He got the short down and distance work. He got the long down and distance work. And more importantly, he looked really good, man. Only 10 carries for over 130 yards. 7-point road favorites the Chargers are against the most tire fire franchise in the NFL right now. I think that J.K. Dobbins and the Chargers are going to go into this game, control the clock, run the football, get out of there with a 20-16 win. It's going to be that type of game for the Chargers. And I think in those type of game environments, you want their run game. And J.K. Dobbins proved that in week 1, he is their run game, or at least the more important part of their run game. Give me J.K. Dobbins as the start of the week for week 2. I really like him this week, and I love that I have so much J.K. Dobbins. You guys know he was my number 1 sleeper coming into the NFL season, so feel very good about J.K. Dobbins this season and this week. If he has a great game this week, I will say see what you can get for him on the open market, but feel really good about J.K. Dobbins and all the bags that I have on him. David Montgomery, my RB17 this week. He had a great week last week against the Rams. Took a little bit of time to get going in that game, but as the game went along, David Montgomery was bruising his opponents, wearing them down. The Bucs defense was absolutely gashed by Jaden Daniels and the rushing attack of the Washington Commanders last week. I know we've been elite against the run as a Bucs fan for the last couple of years, but without our best defensive players this week, Antoine Winfield is out. We have a lot going down in the secondary. Zion McCollum could be out. Kalijah Cansey's probably going to be out up front. I don't think we're going to be nearly as daunting of a run defense this week because we have all those injuries as we usually are. So I really do like David Montgomery this week. And this also, for what it's worth, is the highest point total of the week. It's like a 51.5 point over under. The Lions are home favorites. They're implied for like 28, 29 points. So I feel really good that David Montgomery has a good game in this one. I like him to go higher, his 55.5 rushing yards. The only reason that total is semi-low is because the Bucs run defense is traditionally very good. But like I said, I don't think we're going to be very good at stopping the run this week against the Lions rushing attack. Their offensive line is dominant. Their running backs are very good. So I do like David Montgomery quite a bit this week, more than the consensus likes him because of that Bucs matchup. Running back 18 for me is Rachaad White. Highest over-under game of the week, like I said. Haters will say this is probably too high to have Rachaad White because Bucky Irving looked great. He had a good workload, but the over is catching 81% of the steam in that game, and it's already a 51.5 point total. Rachaad White ran 22 routes last week, and he had 6 targets. This rushing offense also looked so much better under new offensive coordinator Liam Cohen than they ever did against Dave Canales last year. And Dave Canales also, look what he did in Carolina with their rushing offense. So he was a big detriment to the rushing efficiency last year. Everybody wanted to blame Rachaad White for having below expectation rush yards, and the interior offensive line of the Bucs, huge upgrade with Graham Barton coming in, Cody Mauch into year 2. This offense can run the ball now. They looked a lot better. Bucky Irving looked good. Rachaad White looked a little bit better. So Rachaad White, with the upside of the targets that he could get against this Lions matchup where they could score a lot of points, I really like Rachaad White this week to also be a pretty good option. And if you guys can see the situational usage from week 1, Bucky Irving really didn't get any meaningful touches until the game was like 45 minutes in, and the Bucs were trouncing the Commanders at that point in the game. So for the most part, this is still Rachaad White's backfield. I know Bucky Irving is a great waiver ad. He's a great stash because if anything happens to Rachaad White, we know he's good. He looked really good in his limited time, but I think this is still very much Rachaad White's backfield for the foreseeable future. Running back 19 for me on the week is Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet is going to be the starter for the Seahawks this week against the Patriots because Kenneth Walker is out. And in the games that Charbonnet was the starter last year, in Week 11 and Week 12, he saw 84% of the snaps and 87% of the snaps. And this, again, keep in mind, he was a rookie last year. So there's a good chance that he's learned the playbook a little bit better. He's a little bit more comfortable playing in the NFL. So I do think that the down performances we saw from Zach Charbonnet when he was the starter dating back to last year are probably not going to happen again. He already had a great Week 1. He looks like he's taken the step from a player standpoint, and he is going to be the lead back in this game against the Patriots. Patriots. I know last week he only played 33% of the snaps, but like I said, Kenneth Walker is probably going to be out for this game. He is officially listed doubtful. So Zach Charbonnet's got to be in your lineup as a top 20 play. Aaron Jones is my RB20 on the week. He looked great, and he always does when he's healthy. Like, the thing you have to worry about as an Aaron Jones manager, and I actually have him in our listener league, is what happens when Aaron Jones has an ankle sprain or a hamstring pull or something like that. That is when you have to be worried about Aaron Jones, because if he's playing 100% healthy, he's still one of the best running backs in the league, and he looked like that against the Giants last week. He got a good game script to basically run the football, and the usage was good. Pre-Viking shit stomping of the New York Giants, he was the lead back by far. He only ended up playing 53% of the snaps on the game, but again, they absolutely trounced the Giants in that game. Against the 49ers, it's probably going to be a little bit more up-tempo. They're probably going to have to score a little bit more than they did against the Giants to win that game handedly. So I think that we're in store for a lot of targets for Aaron Jones in this game, so I feel really good about him. The 49ers are about a league average run defense, so I wouldn't be too worried about them completely shutting down the run, and hopefully Sam Darnold can look as good as he did in week 1, although it is a much better opponent. So running back 21 for me is Jerome Ford. Excellent game, great workload, absolutely dominated the Browns backfield last week. As much as the offense was terrible, like, the only issue here with Jerome Ford is that the Browns passing game looked like a warm piece of donkey ass in week 1. Against the Cowboys, they averaged 3.3 yards per attempt. Deshaun Watson looked terrible. I believe this passing offense will bounce back against the Jaguars this week. I talked about it with Amari Cooper. I've talked about it with Deshaun Watson, but that also trickles into Jerome Ford as well. When you have 73% of the snaps, 86% of the carries, 64% of the routes, that's RB1 usage. Like, you could argue that I have Jerome Ford way too low right now, but I am a little bit worried about the offense, so that's why I have him a little bit lower than some people do. And for what it's worth, like, all of the running back options I've talked about so far this week are great options. Like, you could throw Jerome Ford all the way up at RB like 11, and I wouldn't really bat an eye too much, because he has a really good outlook this week. It's just there's a lot of great running backs inside my top 24. Outside of my top 24 is when it gets really dicey at the position. So running back 22 for me this week is, again, another dominant backfield workhorse on a bad offense with Ramondre Stevenson going up against the Seahawks. You can't ask for much better of a workload than he saw in week 1. I'm still a little bit skeptical because the Patriots dominated that game against Cincinnati. What happens if the Seahawks aren't terrible like Cincinnati was in week 1 and they come out and they're ahead and it's a negative game script for Ramondre Stevenson? It's also a bottom 10 matchup for him. The Seahawks are quite good against the run. So love the workload, love the routes, love the targets. Love the long down and distance snaps. Everything he got in week 1 was great. It's just I worry that that was a matter of game script. That was a matter of the Patriots being up, and I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, and I don't think that's going to be the case most of the season. I don't think we expect the Patriots to win like 10 games. We expect them to be like a 4 or 5 win team. So Ramondre Stevenson, great workload in week 1. Want to see it continue in week 2 before I completely rise him up the rankings. RB23 for me here is Josh Jacobs. Being cleared for week 2 is great for him. Obviously, he had a back issue that was limiting him in practice. And of course, the elephant in the room here is that Malik Willis is slated to start for the Green Bay Packers. It looks like Jordan Love is going to be out, even though he's officially listed as questionable. I think Malik Willis might be the worst quarterback on an NFL roster right now. Like, he is absolutely awful. He is not good at all. But Josh Jacobs will likely get a great workload yet again, even if Marshawn Lloyd makes his season debut. Even in a great matchup, I worry that the Colts will just hone in on the run, make Malik Willis beat them. Of course, he will not be able to. And try and stop Josh Jacobs and the run game. Maybe he's too low in my rankings right now because the Colts aren't a very good defense against the run, but I do think they're just going to sell out to stop the run because they know Malik Willis isn't going to beat them. But regardless, Josh Jacobs needs to be in your lineup. A great workload in week 1, 72% of the snaps, 75% of the carries. Like I said, you could argue that I have him way, way too low right now, but I just feel really good about a lot of the running backs that I've seen so far. Running back 24 for me, closing out the top RB2 range here, is Brian Robinson. He was excellent in week 1. I do really like him still. It's a top 10 running back matchup for the position. Aaron Jones had his way with the Giants defense last week. Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson are the engines of this offense right now. It's all they can do is scramble with Jaden Daniels, run the ball with Brian Robinson. I guess that's how they're going to move the ball against the Giants, but I do think you're going to be able to sell high on Brian Robinson after this week is over. I think you're going to get him for RB2 value, potentially even high-end RB2 value on the open market, and he will be a big-time sell high for me after this game, but he is a great start nonetheless. Let's get into the flex plays here. You guys can see there DeAndre Swift, Tony Pollard, Najee Harris, Devin Singletary, Javonte Williams, and Zach Moss. It really starts to fall off at the running back position. As I talked about, my top 24 are locked and loaded dudes. I feel really good about all of them. And then it starts to get dicey as soon as the top 24 is done, because DeAndre Swift, my RB25, great workload. Don't be scared. He had a great workload in week 1. 68% of the snaps, 50% of the carries, 61% of the routes. And the Bears could be without Keenan Allen and without Rome Odunze. Both guys are coming into the game questionable. DJ Moore is obviously the only healthy receiver that they have. Caleb Williams looked awful in week 1. Shane Waldron looks like he has no fucking idea what he's doing calling this offense. But DeAndre Swift had a great workload. So that is the thing that I'm leaning on here. The Texans' run defense isn't really that scary. I'd actually consider Swift a half-decent buy low right now, because if the Bears' offense looks any better and he keeps this workload that he has right now, he has legitimate mid RB2, high-end RB2 upside, because we saw him perform like that with the Eagles last year. It's just the issue is that the offense looks really bad right now, and they don't know what they're doing. Caleb Williams looks like a rookie quarterback, very much so, and Shane Waldron looks like he can't call an offense to save his life. So worried about Swift temporarily, but I do think there's a chance they could get back on track in this game. Running back 26 for me is Tony Pollard. Had a great week 1. However, I do want to see the split when the Titans are losing, because similar to the Patriots, I don't expect the Titans to be dominating very many games like they were dominating the Bears for 90% of that game until Will Levis decided to throw an on his knees pick 6. So I want to see what Tony Pollard's split and Tajay Spears' split looks like when the Titans are behind. And I think the Jets should handle this game. They should be able to beat the Tennessee Titans in this one, but I do still think that Tony Pollard is a good start. He was a top 12 running back on the week last week. The Jets' run defense got absolutely gashed by Jordan Mason. So maybe this game will be closer than I'm thinking, but if the Jets are able to run away with this one, I want to see what the split looks like between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears, because Pollard was clearly the lead back last week and Tajay Spears was not. But again, it was a positive game script for Pollard, negative game script for Spears, and we expect more negative game scripts going forward for this team, because I don't think they're very good. They were like the worst offensive line in the NFL in last week's game, and the Jets pass rush definitely not going to help matters with that. Running back 27 for me is Najee Harris. I really like him in this game. The Slugfest Steelers is what I'm going to dub them in 2024, because every game that they play in is going to look like the Falcons game that we saw. 15-10, kickers, field goals, running back touches, and guess what that means? I don't want any of their passing game weapons, but I do like their running backs. That's exactly what the Slugfest Steelers are going to be all season long. It's a top 3 rushing matchup for Najee Harris. The Broncos were dead last in the NFL last year in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the running back position, and they're probably not going to be very good yet again. We saw what Kenneth Walker did to them. We saw what Zach Charbonnet did to them in the first week of the season. The Broncos offense on the other side of the ball is going to have a very tough time with the Steelers defense. They looked dominant in week 1 against the Falcons offense. I think that the Broncos will look very similar to what the Falcons looked like in week 1. That could lead to short fields. That could lead to a lot of red zone opportunity for Najee Harris. So I really do like him to find the end zone in Sunday's game as well. Let's rattle off these last couple here. We have Devin Singletary at RB28, 5 targets. A large share of this backfield is great. The Giants got blown out in this game too. Similar to what I said for Malik Neighbors, I think this is actually bullish news that he had 9.2 PPR points, Devin Singletary, in a game where they got trounced. They got absolutely wiped off the scoreboard and only scored 6 points. I said it with Neighbors because I think this Giants offense will be functional. I don't think they're going to be a complete dumpster fire like they showcased in week 1. I think they'll be a bottom 10, bottom 12 offense, and that means they're going to score more than 6 points per game. So I do actually really like Devin Singletary. For those of you guys that are 0 RB, hero RB type of guys, I do think he's actually a half decent buy low with some of the wide receiver depth that you may have built up on your bench. Like if you have like Khalil Shakir, Rashid Shaheed, somebody on your bench like that, send him away for Devin Singletary if you need running back help, because I do think he actually has a chance to bounce back because the usage was great. I mean, 71% of the snaps, 52% of the routes. He had 5 targets, like I said. The Giants are going to be a little bit better than what they showed. Probably not much better, but they will be a little bit better, in my opinion, going forward. Running back 29 for me on the week is Javonte Williams. As you guys know, in the Flock League, if you're following along, if you're not, link down below in the description for that channel. I traded Mason, Javonte Williams, and Hollywood Brown, RIP, to him for Amari Cooper and Justice Hill in our Flock League. So I feel really good about that trade, especially knowing Hollywood could be out for extended time. And this is why. Javonte Williams is in a bad offense. And that's one thing. We kind of knew that already because Bo Nix is a rookie quarterback, and maybe he would get better as the season goes along. And then as the season goes along, Javonte Williams gets better. But him being in a bad offense right now, that's damn near a 50-50 split between him and Jaleel McLaughlin, is not good. Not good at all. He will forever live in this RB3 territory until I see more of a workload from him going forward. And again, it was a pretty close game. The Broncos were actually like in it the entire time. It's not like we had a weird game script that we had to worry about. So not good news for Javonte Williams. RB30 in my rankings, closing out this tier, Zach Moss. Brutal game script, brutal matchup against the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are going to handle the Bengals because they look bad. They look terrible on offense. Joe Burrow can't pick up a water bottle. T. Higgins is doubtful for this game. I don't think the Bengals are going to be close in this one. I think the Chiefs are going to run them out of the building. And I know Zach Moss had good usage and he scored in week 1. I'm not convinced Chase Brown is not going to be a bigger part of this backfield and won't eat into this workload more. So leave Zach Moss on the bench if you guys can help it. And then as far as deeper league flex plays, again, we're closing up my top 36 here, so I'm just going to rattle these guys off. Jaylen Warren, like I said, I want pieces of that run game. Ezekiel Elliott. We looked at this backfield in week 1, and we have no idea what to do with it. It looks like Ezekiel Elliott is the current starter. He is getting the inside the 5 attempts. He is getting the short down and distance stuff. In a game that expects a lot of points, the Saints and the Cowboys, it's a triple threat. It's a high over-under. It's got a high pace of play, and the Sharps are on the over in it. I do think that the guy that could score is the better bet if you're going to go after one of these Cowboys running backs. So I like Zeke over Dowdle this week until we see further usage that indicates Dowdle might be the better option. Chuba Hubbard, again, I know he was terrible in week 1. I know the Panthers were terrible in week 1, but he technically did have a decent workload, 55% of the snaps, so on and so forth, good route participation. They looked awful. So Chuba Hubbard, don't really want to start him. But if you're desperate, you lost Kenneth Walker, you lost Christian McCaffrey, somebody like that, I do think he's a fine low-end flex play. Chase Brown, same thing. Again, I don't love the workload. I don't love the matchup. Bucky Irving, I do love the game environment, so there's a chance that he has a couple decent touches, but you're probably looking at 10 to 12 touches max for him. Like I said, I think Rachaad White will be the lead back there for the foreseeable future unless we see more kind of blowout game environments. But a lot of points in that Lions-Bucks game, so there's a chance Bucky Irving is still productive on whatever touches he does get. And same goes with Tajay Spears. Again, it looks like Pollard's the lead back, but if the Jets get up early, there's a chance that Tajay Spears is heavily involved in that game environment. So appreciate you guys for making it all the way to the end of this video. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. If you want to tail some of my picks that I showcased throughout this video, Jerome Ford, 70.5 rushing plus receiving yards. Really like him this week to have a great game. James Conner to find the end zone. And also David Montgomery to go higher than his rushing yards. Head on over to Underdog Fantasy. You can tail this pick. Sign up using code FSE. You'll also get a deposit match back up to $1,000 for using our promo code, and you'll have this CeeDee Lamb free pick into your lobby for any new and existing users. You guys can use that free pick. Should be a ton of fun this weekend. Hopefully we get a ton of awesome fantasy production out of these running backs. Let me know down below which guys you have going this week. Let me know any start-sit questions. For the first 2 to 3 hours of this video, I'll really try and answer as many questions as I can, so definitely leave them down below. Subscribe if you're new around here. Check out the site, Flock Fantasy, for my weekly rankings, my rest of season rankings. All of our bonus content is over there, and the bonus content of all the other members of the Flock League if you guys found us through that channel. Definitely head on over to flockfantasy.com. But with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.